Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another Overwatch League fan thoughts and analysis. Today, we are going to be taking a look at the Toronto Defiant. They finished the season actually with the same record and differential as the Washington Justice, 8-20 minus 33. So both tied for the 17th overall spot in the league. And we're going to take a look at what the Toronto Defiant have done so far this offseason and how their roster for 2020 looks like it will perform. So to start, let's look at their coaching staff. Their former head coach was, of course, Bishop, with Bubbly and Don as the assistant coaches and strategic coaches. They also had Moby Dick and Optidox also as assistant coaches. And they are all gone. And they bring in a new team for their coaching staff. They bring in Feifei, who formerly is of, I believe, the Paris Eternal, as their head coach, and then Lobo and Owlbless as strategic coaches and assistant coaches, team managers, all that kind of stuff. So they bring in a French coaching staff this time around, which is interesting because they don't have a single French player on this roster. But let's take a look at this roster. Let's talk about it, and let's look at my thoughts about it and how I think this coaching staff will work. Because this is a pretty good coaching staff. I think it's not a bad coaching staff. I think Feifei did a great job with the time that he had. And then you have two people as assistant coaches. They still have Baroy, who is Winston's lab, as the analyst, so he's still going to be helping out a lot. So I think that is a big benefit for this team. But their roster is the real thing I want to talk about. So let's start with their damage lineup. They are returning with Logix and Mangachu, of course, both of whom played for this team late last season. They also sign Agilities and they sign Surefour. So they have 3 Canadian damage dealers on this roster. Now this team, I think, is actually very good for the damage dealers. I think you'll probably see mostly Surefour and Agilities. They are the two best, I think. Agilities gives you the flex roll. Surefour gives you more of your DPS hit scan roll. Don't know why I said DPS. He gives you more your hit scan roll. And I think you're going to see a lot of them. Mangachu kind of fills a similar role to Agilities, so you may see them switch out, but depending on the hero pool and whatnot. Logix is another player who's mostly hit scan. So I don't know how often Logix will get playtime. He may be a specialist when they need Surefour on another hero. That's my guess for what he'll mostly do. If they need like Tracer Widow or something like that, that might be when he comes in, just to run that Tracer or that Widow, depending on what they want Surefour. With Surefour would most likely be playing the Widow. And I think that DPS core is probably the strongest part of this roster. It's really good, and I don't think they're going to run into many issues with that. I think that it's a really good signing to get Surefour and Agilities, though Agilities was traded to the team. They did sign Surefour. He was a free agent. Surefour is from Canada. He probably wanted to go back home, play for Toronto. Probably is very personal for him. Of course, we've seen players who want to go and play for the place where they're from. Every player for the Seoul Dynasty is like, I want to play for Seoul because they're from Seoul, and I think that would be really, really cool. We saw Soon go to the Paris Eternal for he wanted to play for Paris, and so it's not that uncommon to see players want to go and play for their home team, because you get to play at home and you get to represent your country, and there's a lot of pride in that. Signing Surefour is very, very good. Obviously he's an incredible player. He's one of the best DPS players from the West. He's very good. You can't really say anything bad about this DPS lineup. It's deep. They have what they need. It's 4 players. It's a strong lineup. I really think it's where they shine on this roster as their DPS lineup. Let's take a look at their supports next. They have Roki on a two-way contract in the main support role. They have Kariv as their flex support, and they have Kelix as their main support, who will be playing most of the games, if not all of them. Obviously, Roki on a two-way contract, so he may play here and there and every so often, but there's no way of knowing for sure. Their support lineup is interesting. To start with Kariv, I think Kariv is one of the better flex supports in the league. He looked very good late in the season, last season for the LA Valiant. His Ana is insane. He does also have a good Zenyatta, but his Ana is really where he shines. And his Ana last season was amazing. The match between the Valiant and the Titans in Stage 3, Kariv went off. Kariv was having the day of his life. That game was insane. So Kariv's a very good addition for this team. I think he is an upgrade over Neko, though I do think Neko was a good flex support. I'm a little surprised they got rid of him. I thought they would hold on to 2 because Neko is still a very good player. And a Kariv Neko flex support line is solid. But Neko was released. Neko has not found a team yet, which is kind of surprising, to be completely honest with you. I thought he would have by now, but he is still not on a team, so we'll see what happens there. The main supports are the interesting part. Roki, of course, on a two-way contract. We're not going to see much of him. He played pretty well last season. I think he's a good player to keep around. I think he's very popular among the fans. So you keep him around. You have him on the academy team for the most part. But every so often, you bring him onto the stage. If there's like a homestand, you have him at the homestand. Coming out with the team and all that kind of stuff. That's probably where we're going to see him a lot because I think he's very popular. But I think Mangachu, Sure 4, and Agilities are really kind of the pull now for this team because they're the Canadian players. Kelix as their main support, their starting main support, is interesting because I've been very critical of Kelix for the past 2 seasons. But when I saw the way that Team Denmark played in the World Cup, I was very impressed. They looked very good, and Kelix was a big part of that team. And I wonder if part of his shortcomings and part of things that I didn't think were really impressive to me were some of the internal problems going on with the Boston Uprising. We know about how there was this big issue in terms of like beef between the supports. AimGod didn't really like playing with Kelix, so they started playing Persia a lot more because AimGod didn't want to play with Kelix. There's this whole thing going on, and it was weird and it was complicated, and you wonder if that had any effect on the way Kelix played. Maybe it did. Maybe Kelix is actually going to be playing very, very well. He's going to look very good. He's going to be a fantastic player. I don't know. It's definitely possible that he becomes really, really crazy good now. He has the support cast around him that he needs. But I also think that this team is just better than what the Boston Uprising were. Even in 2018, I think this is still a better team than what that Boston Uprising team was. This team has some actual big name players, whereas that Boston Uprising team, the big name player they had, Note was good, and Striker obviously, but other than that, they were kind of like a whatever roster. This roster I think is a lot better, right? All players that have shown a lot of talent in the Overwatch League, so I think Kelix will do a lot better. But the thing that I have somewhat of an issue with that I want to mention is we know that Neptuno was not trialed for this team. And Neptuno said that it was because of his attitude. Which we know that's not even something Neptuno really has. Neptuno's a really chill guy, and he's a really cool guy, and he's really nice, and he doesn't really have an attitude. And that would have been an upgrade over Kelix, in my opinion. I think Neptuno is a better player. Now, Neptuno, of course, ended up with the Guangzhou Charge. Who knows if he'll ever actually really get playtime over there. We'll see. I think the Guangzhou Charge really could use Neptuno. I think Neptuno's a great player, and I think he really deserves a starting job somewhere. So we'll see what happens. But I think that Kelix, is a good player, but an interesting main support pickup for this roster. Let's finally move on to the tanks, because the tanks are where I have the biggest question marks for this team. We'll start with Nevix, who's their flex tank. Now, we all know how good Nevix is. We've heard how great Nevix is. We've heard that Nevix is a very good player. We know, from what we've heard at least, that in the playoffs this past season, the San Francisco Shock were very close, and we're actually planning on having Nevix as their Sigma player going into playoffs because he was the better Sigma than Choi Hyobin was. But Nevix worked with Choi Hyobin, helped Choi Hyobin become the better Sigma player to the point where he had gotten better than Nevix, seemingly because Nevix understood that Choi Hyobin gave this team a better chance to win, or he just felt that Choi Hyobin was a better player, or he just felt like it was bad if he didn't really feel like he was good, right? So that shows one thing, very importantly. Nevix cares about his team. He will play for his team. If there's someone who's competing with him for his job, that doesn't matter so much as helping his team win does. But it also shows you that he was a better Sigma player than one of the best flex tanks in the world for at least a period of time. So Nevix is a very good player. We know Nevix is a very good player. My one problem is, with Nevix, we don't really see a lot of Nevix. There's not a lot of footage and a lot of clips on Nevix for the past 2 seasons in the Overwatch League. Definitely more in 2018 than were in 2019, but 2019, Choi Hyobin played pretty much every map. So there's a bit of a risk in that because you're basing this on the fact that Nevix is a very good player who did very, very well in the past season because he played for the team that ended up winning the championship, but he didn't play a lot. And I have no doubts in my mind that Nevix is going to be a solid player. He's going to play very well. He's going to do a very good job. But there is definitely a risk with signing him, specifically because he is this player who hasn't really played a lot. Their main tank, though, is where my main question is, because their main tank is Beast, or Beast Halo, formerly of the Fusion University. And my one main thing with this is he's a good player, but he hasn't played a lot. And the most recent time that I watched Fusion University, I don't even think he played, because I'm pretty sure it was who was the other main tank they had, but I don't think it was him. That's what I'll say. I don't think he was the one playing at that time. So it's a bit of an interesting team or an interesting player to look at because we haven't seen a lot of him. There's a lot of main tanks that are still out there that didn't get picked up by any teams. And you know, I think you sign Beast as a bit of a risk. You don't really know what you're going to get out of him. So we'll see. I mean, it's interesting that they signed one main tank, and the one main tank they signed is the one player that they signed from contenders. Everybody else on this roster has been in the Overwatch League. I believe, with the exception of Roki and Mangachu, they're all players who were in the Overwatch League back in the 2018 season. So they have players who are proven Overwatch League talent, and they bring them together, and they're trying to build a very good roster with that in mind. But they bring in a main tank from contenders who does not have Overwatch League experience, and they don't have another main tank with them. There's a huge risk with main tank, because main tank is very, very important. Now, if the meta doesn't really change, and we're still looking at a Orisa Sigma meta, well, then maybe it's not that big of a deal, because you don't really need a super strong main tank player in that, because Orisa's not really that difficult. But I think it's interesting. But I don't worry too much about this team. That's just kind of the one place where I just kind of scratch my chin a little bit. Overall, I think this team actually looks very, very good. They're in a division that I actually don't think is too difficult, with the exception of the NYXL. I think the Toronto Defiant have a really good chance to get into the playoffs just because of their roster. I think they'll be a high middle of the pack team, somewhere in that like 7 to 10 range. 7-12, I guess. Like, getting into the play-in tournament, probably. I don't think they'll be a top 16, but I think they are in that range, potentially even like breaking the top 6, being like the Atlanta Reign, where they just kind of late in the season, a good run and broke into the top 6. But their division is not too difficult, right? I don't think the London Spitfire look that good. The Paris Eternal, who knows where they're going to be in the first half of the season, so they may have to like really fight back to the end. The Boston Uprising, I don't have a lot of faith in, just based on what we've seen. So the Toronto Defiant will be competing with the NYXL. I definitely think this is a team that is capable of beating the NYXL once or twice. I think they have that talent on this roster. We don't know what NYXL is going to be identity-wise, because they've gone through some changes as a team. But I think the Toronto Defiant are a very good roster. I think that their play will definitely play around their damage dealers. And I think they're going to do a lot of really good things. And I think they're going to be able to run a lot of really interesting compositions just based on the damage dealers they have. They can do a lot of different things. So I think this team actually looks really good. I'm a big fan of what they've put together for this season. I think they'll be a playoff team, at least a play-in tournament team. But I wouldn't be surprised if they were also a top 6 playoff team. I really like what this team is. I think that they put together a really good team. There's not really, like, their biggest weakness on this roster is Beast, just because he's like a big unknown. But even still, that's not like a bad signing by any means. Like, there's really no like really weak spot on this roster. This is a really good roster on paper, but we have to see how they perform in game as a team, because we haven't seen that yet. But I'm interested to see what they do going forward. And I'm interested to hear what you think about this team as well. So you can leave your thoughts on the Toronto Defiant in the comments down below. But I am going to get out of here. So thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, consider liking and subscribing. And of course, you can always get more videos like this. I'm doing one for every single team this season. This is the 4th one I've done. So if you want to check those out, the playlist will be linked in the outro or in the cards, the end screen, whatever it's called. But I'm going to get out of here. Thank you once again. Hope you all had a wonderful Thanksgiving. Hope you all have a wonderful weekend coming up. And I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.